So yes, this does feel like a little bit of a kick in the teeth considering their codex only came out a couple of months ago, but the World Eaters are of course getting some brand new 10th edition rules along with all the other factions, and on the plus side, they are actually, in my opinion, looking like a bit of an improvement over their current ones. The army rule for the World Eaters has moved on from the Blood Tithe system that they have now, where you gain points for the number of units destroyed, both on your side and the opponent's, and instead it's become this much simpler, but I would argue much more fun and engaging mechanic called the Blessings of Khorne. And for this, at the start of the battle round, you roll 8d6, because of course it's going to be 8, and then you can choose up to 2 buffs for your army based on the rolls that you make. And these buffs last until the end of the battle round, and as you can see, they do look a little bit complicated at first when you first sort of read through them, but it's really not. It's really quite simple. Basically, some require any double, some require a double of a specific number or higher, and others require triples. So for example, if you rolled your 8d6, you could get maybe 3 5s and 3 4s and then a 1 or a 2. So you could in theory activate both Warp Blades with the triple 5s and Unbridled Bloodlust with the triple 4s. Or if you rolled 3 5s and 2 4s, you could still go for either Warp Blades or Unbridled Bloodlust with those 5s, but the double 4s could get you instead Total Carnage or Martial Excellence. So it does give you a bit of a choice and a bit of an ability to sort of play around with what buffs you need in a specific situation. You aren't always guaranteed to get what you need. There is a bit more randomness to it. But I think the cool thing is that with 8 dice, you are guaranteed, just because of the fact that it's 8 dice and there are 6 sides on a dice, to get at least 2 doubles or get a triple. So you will always be able to get at least one of these powers off, and 90% of the time you will probably be able to get 2 off if you want to. You should always be able to get either Rage Fueled Invigoration and Wrathful Devotion for the +2 movement and Feel No Pain, or Total Carnage or Warp Blades if you happen to roll maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and then 3 6s. Although there is also something else you could do with those 3 6s that you may want to save them for instead. I think in general it's just a super cool, really fun mechanic, and I think it can potentially give you quite a lot of front-loaded potential in your army rather than having to wait for units to die or wait for you to kill enemy units, which can mean it can be a turn or two until you can really sort of get things rolling. There is a lot less of a snowballing effect with this style of army rule compared to the Blood Tithe, and I think in general that is probably better for the game. I also really like that it doesn't punish you for running big squads. Obviously with the old Blood Tithe, you just wanted as many MSUs as you could have possibly on the board to rack up those points. Now you can run bigger squads and not feel like you are wasting some of your Blood Tithe by not running sort of just like the most amount of MSUs as you possibly could. On the unit focus front, we of course get the infamous Khorne Berserkers, and of course we get Angron, both of which do look pretty spicy. Berserkers haven't changed all that much. They are still T4 with 2 wounds and a 3-up save. They have 4 attacks with their chain blades, which swing at strength 5, -1 AP and 1 damage. So they have lost an AP compared to now, but to make up for that, their icon is much better now, I think. It lets you re-roll one of the Blessings of Khorne dice if the unit is within range of an objective. So now you really can reliably get a lot more of those buffs off that you want and really try and focus. If you've got, a double and you really want to go for a triple, you can re-roll one of your other dice to just try and go for those triple dice. So you can really a lot more aim and focus for what buffs you want to get off and have a good chance of getting them, especially if you have 2 or 3 or 4 squads with icons on objectives, because they all get this rule. So you are rolling 8d6 for your army rule, but you could potentially be re-rolling 3 or 4 or 5 or even 6 of them if you are just grabbing all the objectives. So it's a really good incentive for you to go and get the objectives and play the game. It gives you a really strong buff to your army ability and can really allow you to almost cherry pick the buff that you want to get for your army in a given turn. They also still have their Blood Surge, which gives them an extra d6 inch move after a model in that unit has been destroyed by enemy shooting, but there is a key and really significant change to this in that, unlike in 9th edition, where you couldn't move into engagement range, now it specifies you can move into engagement range with this move, so you can very sneakily use this to get a squad of your Berserkers into combat, ready to swing with all of your attacks and just cleave an enemy to pieces. And I think it's going to make shooting at these guys, especially if they're really close to you, something like overwatching these guys if they are preparing for a charge in the following charge phase, is going to be a really risky prospect now, because if you kill one of these models, they could roll a 6 and just get into combat ready to swing into you without having to roll a charge roll at all. So Berserkers, they have lost a bit of their overall damage output, I think, but I think in general their utility has gone up a lot, and they interact really nicely with your army ability now, and the improvement to Blood Surge is a really, really big win for them as well. And then, of course, we have Angron, and he is still just as terrifying as ever. He's had a jump from T7 to T11, he's got his 2-up save and a 4-up invuln, and he has 16 wounds to keep him alive. So he's gone up in durability in some ways with the improved toughness, but he has dropped in others, because in 9th edition he had 18 wounds, he is just down to 16 now, but still, when he reaches combat, he will almost certainly obliterate almost anything that he touches. Samniarus and Spinegrinder still have their dual profile, with the strike being 8 attacks at strength 16, minus 4 AP and d6 plus 2 damage. So he has actually lost attacks compared to his current profile, but d6 plus 2 damage is slightly higher on average than d3 plus 3, and jumps to around 5.5 damage on average compared to the just 5 that d3 plus 3 has. In the sweep profile, he now does only have 18 attacks, and I know that's so sad, he's only got 18 attacks. But to be fair, he does currently have like double that, so it is a fairly significant drop, but it has gained a point of damage. So in his sweep profile, he is now swinging at strength 8, minus 2 AP and 2 damage, rather than strength 9, minus 3 AP and 1 damage. So yes, it has dropped strength and AP, but that jump to 2 damage is going to make it so good still at just wiping out entire squads of things like intercessors, and even going into tougher things like terminators, you are going to kill them much more easily just because of that doubled damage output. His revive mechanic is also no longer tied to Blood Tithe, of course, because it's no longer a thing. It's instead done by using triple sixes on the Blessings of Khorne. So with your 8d6, you have around a 13.5% chance of getting that just on that roll. So it doesn't seem super likely, but of course then you've got to remember, if you've got Berserkers on objectives, you do get those extra rerolls, and that is going to really help you. I think if you have 6 squads of Berserkers each on an objective, that jumps to around a 40% chance by using the rerolls to get a triple 6 across your 8d6. So you can pretty reliably get him back at least once or twice over the course of the game, and if you do roll those 3-6, he gets put into reserves with all his wounds, and remember, this is done at the start of the battle round, so he can then deep strike in your following movement phase, ready to charge into the enemy and just tear them apart all over again. It is, I would argue, maybe a bit less reliable than using the Blood Tithe, because you know how many Blood Tithe points you have, there's no sort of randomness to it. But of course, the good thing about this new version is that it doesn't require units to be dying, so you can still get this off even if you are in sort of the last couple of turns in the game and you've only got 1 or 2 units left on the board, whereas previously you physically wouldn't be able to get enough Blood Tithe to bring him back. Now you can always have a chance of bringing him back even in sort of the last turn of the game. So from that point of view, it is really solid, and I like the fact that he can come back multiple times. Yes, it's a little bit random, but he can, I would say overall, more reliably come back even as your army starts to kind of wither away and you lose units. Then, like Guilliman and Abaddon, he has his choice of auras, which we've seen going into 10th edition. Interestingly about these is that they are chosen at the start of the charge phase, so you really can choose exactly what you need just before you get a charge off and go into combat to really make the most of your attacks or make sure you reach combat. He can give +1 to charges within 6 inches with Glorious Bloodletting. He can give +1 attack to units below starting strength with Infectious Rage, and he can give a more generic rerolls to hit with Righteous Slaughter. So if you are 6 inches away from an enemy and you just want to make absolutely sure you get that charge off, you could choose Glorious Bloodletting, or if you have 2 or 3 squads around him that have all taken casualties and are about to charge in, maybe choose Infectious Rage to get that more damage output, or if you just want a more generic good buff for a unit around him, Righteous Slaughter will get you some very accurate, very deadly attacks to go into the enemy. All in all, I think it's fair to say Angron has lost a few things in a few places. He's got less attacks, he is arguably a bit less durable, but he is still super killy, and he's got a huge amount of customization and the ability to really bring just the right aura at the right time, because he can choose his aura in the charge phase, so you can make sure that your melee absolutely gets the right buff at the right time, ready to kill the enemy, which is perfect for a melee focused army like the World Eaters. So I do think he is still going to be a very popular choice in 10th edition. They then go on to show us a weapon we haven't seen in a while, or at least I haven't seen it in a while. I don't think I've ever seen it on the tabletop, the Demon Gorge Cannon, which is a weapon on the rarely seen Lord of Skulls. This is currently D6 shots at strength 10, -4 AP and D3 +3 damage, and it has blast. In 10th edition, this is changing to D6 shots at strength 14, -4 AP and D6 +2 damage. So it's still got reasonably good strength, although arguably it is a slight nerf, as strength 10 would have wounded everything including things like Stompers and Knights on 3s in 9th edition, whereas in 10th with their almost certainly T14 profile, we've had that confirmed for the Stomper, and I would assume it's going to be the same for the Knights, that will now be wounding on 4s. But on the other hand, Blast has got better for it, so it's going to be a lot more impactful in an anti-infantry role. And as I said earlier, D6 +2 damage is marginally better than D3 +3, so it is very similar. I would say it's probably slightly better against infantry and light and medium vehicles, and perhaps just a tiny bit worse against those heaviest vehicles like Knights and Titans that you might come up against. And then finally we get to see a stratagem. This one, Blood Offering, is kind of similar to a few others we've seen in these previews, and it plays around the whole sticky objectives theme. This one is used when a unit of yours dies, and for 1 CP, if that unit was in range of an objective, even though they've just been killed, you keep hold of it until the enemy claims it. So if your opponent was hoping for a clutch last minute win by shooting your unit off a key objective, you can absolutely deny them that and just be like, yes, the unit is dead, but that objective is still very much mine and I will still be claiming points from it. It's just maybe slightly more soaked in blood than it was before. So it's a really cool, really impactful reactive stratagem that can kind of ruin your opponent's last-ditch effort to shoot you off an objective and you know, make sure you aren't getting points for it. And I think it's going to make it almost impossible to have an essentially leaf blower style list, just shoot a World Eater's army off objectives and then not worry about them. The enemy is going to have to move up and retake those objectives from you, which of course just brings them ever closer to your charge range. So after using this stratagem, yes, you may have lost a unit, but it's almost a win for you because the enemy is now even closer to you, so you can get more charges into them. So that is the World Eaters. There are a few big changes considering how recent their codex is, but I think in general it's looking really quite good fun. I do really like their new army mechanic. The Blessings of Khorne seem really cool, and I like rolling dice, so rolling 8d6 for an army ability just appeals to me. May not appeal to everyone, I get that, but I think it's quite a cool new mechanic, and I think it adds a lot more agency to you rather than just waiting for units to die as the game goes on. But as always, I'd love to know what you think of these rules. Do you like these new rules for the World Eaters, or do you miss the old Blood Tithe mechanic? Let me know down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.